Hey you, it's CovertGoBlue, and this channel is not dead. I'm back, ready to talk about some new Magic cards, as that is my favorite thing to do on the channel. So we're talking about March of the Machine Aftermath, and the way that this is spoiled is early and unexpected and weird, and there have been other videos about it, so you can definitely find those various spots on the internet. But a YouTuber got a hold of some boxes, collector booster boxes of the product early, opened them, and because it's a micro set, it's like only 48 cards, I guess, they revealed the whole set a few weeks early. Wow. Holy cow. Now, normally I don't dive into early spoilers, unofficial spoilers. It's usually, and for good reason, usually things are set up to be spoiled in a certain way, and it's fun to go through spoiler season with a lot of the community and everybody kind of seeing the cards and circulating the discussion around the same time and things like that. This case is different. The spoiler season for March of the Machine Aftermath is scheduled to specifically be 2 days. 2 whole days, and it's right before I travel to Minneapolis, MagicCon Minneapolis. By the way, I'm heading there. If anybody else is going to be in Minneapolis, shout out in the comments. Make sure you join the Discord, follow the channel CovertGoWhere. I'll be posting where and when I'm playing games and meeting people at Minneapolis. I want to make sure that any of you who want to meet me get to meet me. Anyway, so because of the scheduling, I wasn't going to be around to make these videos reacting to the cards anyway. So this is kind of a weird situation where I'm going to dive into unofficial spoilers. So I'm going to tell you straight up, the images are weird. They're not on Scryfall. We have to use this site called Mythic Spoiler. You can see fingernails in some of these. Quality, but we get to talk about the new cards, which, as I've mentioned a time or two, is my favorite thing to do and the main thing I love to do on this specific channel. So let's, without further ado, get into it. How big can I make this and still have it look good? That doesn't look good. There we go. We'll keep it right there. Also, just going to make a handful of these videos covering 3 to 4 cards per video. Hopefully you enjoy going over them. These cards are part of, I guess it's worth mentioning, March of the Machine Aftermath is a micro set that is standard legal. This is replacing the Alchemy set, so there will be no Alchemy set for March of the Machine, but instead we'll be getting this as standard and Alchemy legal on Arena, of course also Historic legal, and Historic Brawl legal. And I'll tell you right now, a lot of legendary creatures, a lot of like Commander stuff, so we'll also be talking a tiny smidge about Commander, as it is a format I very much like playing, but primarily covering Arena formats. All right, I've said all that. I'm not going to say it in any of the other March of the Machines videos. This will be on sale, I'm sure, sometime in the middle of May. All right, Narset, Enlightened Exile, 1 and Jeskai for a legendary creature, Human Monk. Creatures you control have prowess. By the way, I haven't read any of these. We're doing this together. Creatures you control have prowess. Whenever Narset Enlightened Exile attacks, exile target non-creature, non-land card with mana value less than Narset's power from a graveyard and copy it. You may cast the copy without paying its mana cost. Huh. Whenever it attacks, exile target non-creature, non-land card with mana value less than Narset's power from a graveyard and copy it. Doesn't have to be your graveyard. You may cast the copy without paying its mana cost, so you don't have to worry about colors or color restrictions. You can fill your own graveyard, or you can hit your opponent's graveyard. You exile it so it's gone. You copy it. You put the copy on the stack so it's cast. The copy can be countered. It resolves. It triggers prowess. All your creatures, including Narset here, have prowess. This card is a sick commander card. In standard, it's playable, but not very playable. Like, it's close to not playable. It's, 4 mana, enters the battlefield, no immediate effect. You have to untap and use it. Mural was good enough in Soldiers to get play even from that position, but Mural has some other important text, like the opponent can't remove it on their own end step. They have to untap and then kill it, which forces weird use of mana. This doesn't have that, so probably not a standard, especially in a fully developed standard, which is where we're at. All the cards for standard except for these have been released. Standard is going to be a pretty crowded place. Probably not a standard card. a very, I would say, okay Historic Brawl card. You really want card advantage in the command zone in Historic Brawl. This is card advantage, but you have to attack with it, which is very unreliable. So you can do this in Historic Brawl, but it probably won't be super competitive. However, you're in Jeskai, you're in blue, you can surround it with a lot of counter spells and things to protect it to make it happen. This will be a very good commander card. This will be a very fun build around for commander. This is exactly where you want to be. You throw some equipment on this thing, you make its power bigger, you're copying bigger and bigger spells. You cast some spells pre-combat, you trigger the prowess, it gets bigger so that you can take more stuff. You make a bunch of tokens, you give them all prowess, you make them all huge. The card you cast, the copy you cast, is a non-creature, non-land, so it naturally triggers prowess. So just attacking with this gives your board +1/+1 on its own. Yeah, this is going to be a total commander card. Next up, we have Calyx, guided by fate. Calyx, what were you doing during all this March of the Machines nonsense? By the way, they said that a big reason for the late spoiler season was so people could enjoy the story for March of the Machines, because there are spoilers. The spoilers are these people either survive the war or are not completed. Spoiler. This is Calyx, guided by fate. It is 1 and a green and a white for a legendary enchantment creature human druid. Lost your spark, did ya? You're not a planeswalker anymore. That's interesting. Constellation. Whenever Calyx, guided by fate, or another enchantment enter the battlefield under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. Could include itself. Cool. Whenever Calyx or an enchanted creature you control deals combat damage to a player, you may create a token that's a copy of a non-legendary enchantment you control. Do this once each turn. That's pretty cool. So we're making our creatures bigger just by playing enchantments and enchantment creatures, because that's very much what a deck like this wants to do. And then when they hit, you're copying enchantments. The rate isn't standard terrible, and I could definitely see this getting some play in the enchantment deck, the green-white enchantment deck that runs around in standard. The problem is that deck has been outmoded badly. It really has a soldier problem. It's not great against mono red because all their stuff dies to the play with fires that are out there. That deck has definitely phased out of standard. I rarely see it anymore. It used to be an important part of meta. I don't think that this is enough to bring it back. So while I will try it in that deck, and some other enchantment players might try it as something to give that deck a little boost, I don't think it gives enough of a boost. It is a pretty cool way to do it, though. You picture a Kami of Transience. You know, you play Spirit, the first one, Generous Visitor, then you play Kami of Transience, then you play this, and you can attack with a 5/5 trample, and then when it hits, you can copy nothing because you don't have an enchantment on the battlefield that you can copy because this is legendary. That sucks. So we have to squeeze an enchantment onto the battlefield there somewhere. Still, it's a little bit of inspiration for that deck that kind of needed it. I'm being long-winded to say it goes in that deck, and that deck probably stinks. However, when you're looking at Historic Brawl, this isn't as good as Sithis, but it goes in Sithis, so it will be played there if you like Enchantress style decks. And if you want a little different take on Sithis, you can play this, but why would you? Sithis is amazing. And in Commander, kind of the same argument, to be honest. I think that this is a less inspiring build around than Narset, which provided kind of a new thing. This is a enchantments with some card advantage and a lot of counters. It's a more fun way to play Enchantress, but it's not more fun than drawing cards, I don't think. Just draw cards, play Sithis. All right, Tyvar the Bellicose. The Bellicose? Like, what? Is that the name of the giant belt he puts over his belly? I don't know. Anyway, the Bellicose, 2 and a green and a black for a legendary creature elf warrior. Whenever one or more elves you control attack, they gain Death Touch until end of turn. Each creature you control has, whenever a mana ability of this creature resolves, put a number of +1/+1 counters on it equal to the amount of mana that creature produced. This triggers once a turn. It triggers only once a turn. Well, that's too bad. However, you can usually tap your creatures for mana at instant speed, so if you're not using all of it to cast stuff, you can, you know, on the next player's turn, tap your other elf and it gets bigger. Okay, so we're tapping our stuff for mana and making it bigger, and tapping our stuff for mana and making it bigger, and then eventually they attack. The attacking with Death Touch is, of course, pretty good too, especially if you have elves that when they hit the opponent trigger in some way. But The 5/4 is really big for a 4-mana elf warrior, so at least they made this hit kind of hard. Standard, no chance. Historic Brawl, go ahead, but is it better than the other Tyvar? Probably not. I think that the Tyvar Planeswalker is harder to kill. Also, why doesn't this Tyvar be a Planeswalker? Did you also lose your spark? What happened? And then finally, I would say in Commander, you can do this. Elves are very popular, but I don't think that this is remotely better than Lathril. And Lathril is very satisfying. You hit your players and you make a whole bunch of elves. This is fun specifically with Marwyn. You tap Marwyn for 10 mana and you put 10 +1/+1 counters on Marwyn and you use the mana to untap Marwyn and tap it again. That is sick, but that's kind of the only big combo here. There are a lot of green tutors that can go get the Marwyn to make that absolutely disgusting thing happen, but I'm honestly just not that pumped about another elf commander. This ability is cool, but I don't think it's the build around for Historic Brawler commander that I think they wanted. I think I'd rather just throw it in my Golgari elf deck. Last one for today, we have Obnixilis, Captive Kingpin. All right, this is 2 and a black and a red, and it is a legendary creature demon with flying and trample. It is a 4/3, also doesn't have a spark anymore. What? I need, okay, this is why I actually need the official spoilers, because I need the lore why all these things aren't planeswalking. They've all lost their planeswalkerness, or have they? Are they just going to turn that on later? I don't know. Anyway, 4/3 flying trample demon. Whenever one or more opponents each lose exactly 1 life, weird, put a +1/+1 counter on Obnixilis, Captive Kingpin. Exile the top card of your library until your next end step. You may play that card until your next end step. That's not particularly great, right? Because your next end step is if this happens in main phase. Anyway, so it's when your opponents lose exactly 1 life, and this can be combo-tastic. Obviously, they can make themselves lose 1 life. They can have Phyrexian Arena, fetch lands, things like that. Gets a lot of value. But you think about Blood Artist, and that's where the card gets really exciting, as Blood Artist targets. So, and they resolve kind of 1 by 1. This doesn't have a once a turn limiter on it like the others. In Standard, I don't see it at all. So I think we're like I think we're 0 for 4 on standard playable cards here, if I'm being really honest. In Historic Brawl, I mean 1v1 is not nearly as good, but we could kind of play a Blood Artist version. This is another commander card. Just that's the way it is. That's the way a lot of these cards are going to be, quite honestly. When it says legendary creature and whenever 1 or more players or opponents, just think commander immediately. And this one though is actually kind of sweet, because you combine this with Bastion of Remembrance, Blood Artist, Zulaport Cutthroat, some sack fodder, sack outlets, and you are doing some really gross stuff. This thing can become absolutely huge. It can one-shot people, and it can gain a ton of value, kind of Prosper-ish, but Prosper is more of a treasure, like instant sorcery storm deck, whereas this is a sacrifice deck that goes into storm territory. So this is probably the coolest card I've seen today, and it's definitely cool specifically for Commander. All right, that's going to do it for today's March of the Machine talk. If you are excited about a certain card, or if you think I missed something to do with the cards here, or if I said something wrong and the card doesn't work the way I think it does, or if you have opinions about cards being made for Commander and then being put into Standard and then doing nothing, let me know. Let me know in the comments. Curious what you guys have to say about this little Aftermath set. Thank you for watching this video. You're cool.